My husband was throwing out my divorce papers, shouting, "You'll never leave me." I backed away slowly. "This isn't you." He glared and said, "I gave up everything for you." I whimpered, "Then why do I feel so alone?" Suddenly, our daughter walked in and said, "Mom, is Dad hurting you?" That's when I knew it was time to go. I should have seen it coming. Looking back, all the signs were there, small cracks that deepened over time, tiny shifts in the way he spoke, the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel like I was shrinking, bit by bit, until I barely recognized myself. But I ignored them, because ignoring them was easier than facing the truth. That night, when I came home from work, I knew something was wrong before I even stepped inside. The house was too quiet. Eric's car was in the driveway, but the lights were dim. Normally, he'd have the TV blaring some news segment, scrolling through his phone, barely glancing up when I walked in. But not that night. I hesitated at the front door, my pulse quickening. Then I stepped inside. The air in the house was thick, too warm, too still. My eyes adjusted to the dim lighting, and that's when I saw him. Eric was standing in the middle of the living room, shoulders tense, hands clenched into fists at his sides. At first, I didn't see what he was holding. Then my stomach dropped. The divorce papers. Crushed in his grip, edges torn, as if he had tried to rip them apart, but stopped halfway. The sight of them ruined, violated, made something twist deep inside me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and uneven. His chest rose and fell, too fast, too unsteady. Then, his voice low, raw. "You were really gonna do this?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. My feet felt glued to the floor. "Eric," he took a step forward. "You were gonna leave me?" His voice cracked, but there was nothing soft about it. It was an accusation, a demand, as if I had betrayed him. I should have been afraid. But all I felt in that moment was tired. So tired of this. Of him. Of the endless cycle, good days that made me second-guess myself, bad days that made me feel like I was suffocating. "You don't have to do this," I said quietly. "We can talk." He let out a sharp laugh, bitter and cold. "That's rich, coming from you. You weren't gonna talk. You were just gonna run." I didn't answer. Because he was right. I was going to run. And I should have done it sooner. His hands trembled around the papers, knuckles white. Then he threw them onto the coffee table, the crumpled pages scattering like fallen leaves. "I gave up everything for you." His voice was almost a whisper now, but there was something dangerous underneath it. I shook my head. "Eric, this isn't you." His eyes darkened. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Talk to me like I'm some kind of..." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Like I'm not your husband." I wanted to tell him that a husband shouldn't make his wife feel like this. A husband shouldn't make her dread coming home. A husband shouldn't turn love into a prison. But the words stuck in my throat. Because deep down, I knew they wouldn't matter. Something in his expression shifted then, his features twisting. He took another step forward, and for the first time, I did feel afraid. Not because I thought he would hurt me, because I finally understood that he was never going to let me go. "And then, Mom?" The sound of her voice shattered the tension like glass. I turned so fast my vision blurred. Mia stood in the hallway, gripping the strap of her backpack, her face pale and drawn. She was staring at Eric. At me. At the scattered papers on the table. My chest ached. She was 12. She shouldn't have to see this. Eric stiffened. He glanced at Mia, then back at me, something flickering in his eyes. And for the first time I saw it, he wasn't just angry. He was losing control. Mia's voice was small. "Mom, is Dad hurting you?" The air left my lungs. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Then I saw it, the way Eric's jaw clenched, the way his fingers twitched at his sides. The way he looked at me, his whole body tense with expectation. Because he was waiting for my answer. He wanted me to say no. He wanted me to lie. And maybe a year ago I would have. But Mia was standing right there watching. And suddenly I knew. I couldn't do this anymore. I wouldn't. I turned to my daughter and forced my voice to stay steady. "Go to your room, baby." Mia hesitated. "Mom, now." She swallowed hard, then nodded and disappeared down the hall. I waited until I heard her door shut before I turned back to Eric. His eyes burned into mine. "You really want to do this?" he asked quietly. My pulse roared in my ears. "I have to." His face twisted. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe. But if I stayed, it would be the biggest mistake of my life." I lifted my chin. "I'm leaving, Eric." He stared at me. Then, slowly, he exhaled. "Over my dead body." The words were soft. Almost casual. But I knew better. I backed away, my heart pounding. "I need to pack some things." "Julia." His voice was dangerous now. I turned and walked down the hall before he could say anything else. Because if I didn't leave tonight, I wasn't sure I ever would. I shut the bedroom door behind me and locked it. My breath came fast, too fast. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady the wild pounding of my heart. My hands were ice cold, my skin prickling with adrenaline. Eric was still in the living room. I could hear the faint scrape of his footsteps as he paced. I needed to move fast. I grabbed the duffel bag I had hidden under the bed earlier that week. I had started packing little by little, just a few clothes, cash I had tucked away, important documents stuffed into a folder at the bottom. I had thought I had more time. I had been wrong. As I shoved in the last of Mia's clothes, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back. My dark brown hair was loose around my shoulders, slightly disheveled from the long shift at the hospital. My face was pale, my lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. But it was my eyes that stopped me. They weren't just tired. They were haunted. I didn't have time to dwell on it. I grabbed the bag, hoisted it over my shoulder, and quietly opened the door. The hallway was empty, but I could still hear Eric's movements. He wasn't saying anything anymore, just pacing. Waiting. I went to Mia's room. She was sitting on her bed, legs pulled to her chest, hugging a worn-out stuffed rabbit she had owned since she was 4. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes wide and worried. "Are we leaving?" she whispered. I nodded. She swallowed, glancing at the closed bedroom door. "What about Dad?" I didn't answer. Instead, I knelt in front of her, cupping her small hands in mine. "I need you to listen to me, okay? We're going to go out the back door. We have to be quiet. Can you do that?" She nodded quickly. I squeezed her hands. "Good girl." She clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter as she climbed out of bed. I handed her a small backpack I had packed for her earlier. She slung it over her shoulder, then looked at me, waiting. I held my breath as I turned the doorknob, easing the door open just enough to peek out. The hallway was still empty. Mia stayed close behind me as we crept toward the back door. My stomach clenched with every creak of the floorboards, but I forced myself to keep going. We were almost there. I reached for the back door handle. Then, from the living room, "Where do you think you're going?" My body locked up. Mia stiffened behind me. Slowly, I turned. Eric stood at the edge of the living room, half-shadowed, his arms crossed. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. My heart hammered. "Mia, go to the car," I said evenly. She hesitated. "Mom, go." She looked at me, looked at Eric, then bolted through the door. I heard her footsteps on the deck, the rush of her breath as she ran. Eric took a step toward me. "Julia," he said, his voice low, measured. "You don't have to do this." "I do." He exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "You're being dramatic." I tightened my grip on the bag strap over my shoulder. He saw the movement. His eyes flicked to the duffel bag and something in his face shifted. His expression darkened. "You packed?" I didn't answer. His lips parted slightly, as if the realization had physically struck him. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "You were planning this." "Eric, how long?" His voice was dangerously soft. "How long have you been lying to me?" I took a careful step backward. "This isn't a conversation we need to have right now," I said calmly. "I just need to leave." His eyes flashed. "You think I'm going to let you walk out that door?" A cold shiver ran through me. "I'm not asking for your permission." His expression twisted, rage flickering across his face. Then he lunged. I didn't think. I just reacted. I ran. I yanked open the back door and slammed it shut behind me, sprinting across the yard. My feet barely touched the ground as I flew toward the car. Mia was already in the passenger seat, her eyes wide with panic. "Mom." I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking violently. Behind me, I heard the back door explode open. "Julia." Eric's voice was closer now, pounding footsteps cutting through the night. The lock clicked open. I wrenched the door open, practically throwing myself inside. Eric's shadow loomed in the rearview mirror. I slammed the door shut. My fingers fumbled over the ignition. The key slipped once, twice, then the engine roared to life. Eric reached the car just as I threw it into reverse. His hand slammed against the driver's side window. "Julia, don't do this." I didn't look at him. Didn't let myself hesitate. I yanked the gear into drive and hit the gas. The tires screeched against the pavement. The car lurched forward. Eric's voice faded behind us. We were gone. Mia didn't speak for a long time. She sat curled up in the passenger seat, hugging her stuffed rabbit, staring out the window. The headlights illuminated the empty streets, casting long shadows on the pavement. My hands were still trembling on the steering wheel. My skin was damp with sweat, my breathing uneven. I kept expecting to see Eric's car in the rearview mirror. But we were alone. Finally, Mia spoke. Where are we going? I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay steady. Rachel's. Rachel had been my best friend since college. She lived across town in a tiny apartment, and she had already told me if I ever needed a place to go, I had one. Mia nodded slowly, then glanced down at her rabbit, stroking its worn ears. Is Dad gonna come after us? I gripped the wheel tighter. I don't know. She didn't say anything after that. We drove through the night, streetlights flashing past in a steady blur. Every muscle in my body ached from tension, exhaustion pressing down on me like a weight. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something else too. Freedom. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know if Eric would let me go, or if this was only the beginning of something worse. But at that moment, with the night stretching ahead of us and Mia safe beside me, I knew one thing for certain. I had made the right choice. The drive to Rachel's felt longer than it should have. Every set of headlights in the distance made my stomach clench. Every turn in the road felt like an opportunity for Eric to suddenly appear in my rearview mirror. But he didn't. Mia sat silently beside me, hugging her rabbit, her fingers gripping the worn fabric like a lifeline. She didn't cry. She didn't ask questions. She just sat there, staring out the window, her little face pale and tight. I reached over, placing a hand over hers. She flinched. Not much, just a tiny jerk of her fingers. But it was enough to make my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. I wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, that we were safe now. But I wasn't sure if that was true. So I just squeezed her hand gently and kept driving. Rachel's apartment complex was on the other side of town, a row of old brick buildings with peeling white balconies. I pulled into an empty space near the back, my fingers still stiff on the steering wheel. For a few seconds, I just sat there. The silence in the car was heavy. The kind that wasn't just quiet, it was full of all the things neither of us were saying. Then I turned to Mia. Ready? She nodded. I got out, grabbed our bags from the back seat, and took her hand as we walked up to the entrance. The motion sensor light flickered on, casting long, sharp shadows across the pavement. Rachel's apartment was on the 2nd floor. I knocked twice, the sound loud in the stillness of the night. There was a pause, then footsteps, and then the door swung open. Rachel stood in the doorway, barefoot, wearing pajama pants and an old t-shirt. Her short auburn hair was messy, her glasses slightly askew, but her eyes, sharp, knowing, took one look at me and knew. She pulled me into a tight hug without saying a word. Mia was stiff beside me, still holding onto her backpack like she wasn't sure this was real. Rachel noticed. She knelt down in front of her, offering a small smile. Hey, kiddo, she said softly. I made cookies. Wanna help me eat them? Mia hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. Rachel took her hand, leading her inside. I followed, shutting the door behind me. And for the first time in years, I let out a breath that didn't feel like it was going to shatter me. Rachel didn't ask questions that night. She just gave me a blanket, let Mia crash on the couch, and made tea while I sat at her kitchen table, staring into nothing. You did it, she murmured eventually, sliding a steaming mug in front of me. I let out a hollow laugh. I don't know if I did. Rachel's expression darkened. He's gonna fight this, isn't he? I didn't answer, because we both already knew the truth. Eric wasn't the kind of man who let things go. The next morning, I woke up to 14 missed calls. Eric, Julia, you need to come home. We can fix this. Eric, I swear, I won't be mad. Just talk to me. Eric, you're making a mistake. Mia needs her father. Eric, pick up the damn phone. By noon, the messages had changed. Eric, you're being ridiculous. Eric, you think you're gonna get full custody? Good luck with that. Eric, you want a war, Julia? Fine. I'll give you a war. I set my phone down, my hands shaking. Rachel was watching me from across the table, her expression unreadable. You need a lawyer, she said. I nodded. Because now, it wasn't just about leaving. It was about surviving what came next. I found a lawyer that afternoon. His name was Peter Holloway, mid-40s, tall, with graying hair and a calm, steady presence. He listened carefully as I told him everything, taking notes, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled. First thing we do, he said, is file for a restraining order. The words made my stomach twist. Will that be enough? I asked. Peter's jaw tightened. It's a start. But men like your husband, they don't like losing control. You need to be prepared for that. I swallowed. Meaning? Meaning, he said carefully, Eric is going to fight dirty. He'll try to turn this around on you. Make it look like you are the unstable one. He might claim you kidnapped Mia. He might try to get temporary custody. He might even. He hesitated. I stared at him. What? Peter sighed. He might try to follow you. Get close. Scare you into coming back. My blood ran cold. He must have seen the look on my face because his voice softened. But listen to me, Julia. You can win this. We just have to be smart. Stay somewhere safe. Document everything. And no matter what he says or does, do not go back to him. I nodded, gripping the edge of the desk so tightly my knuckles ached. I had gotten away once. I wasn't about to let him pull me back. That night, I dreamed about him. I was back in our house, standing in the living room, the divorce papers crumpled in his fist. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, as he asked me, "Do you really think you can live without me?" Then his hands tightened around my throat. I woke up gasping. The apartment was dark. Quiet. Then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping. Not loud. Not frantic. Just deliberate. My heart slammed against my ribs. I sat up slowly, glancing at the clock. 2:47 a.m. The tapping came again. The window. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to move. I tiptoed toward the front of the apartment, every nerve in my body screaming. Rachel's place was on the second floor. There was no fire escape. No way someone should be at the window. Unless they had climbed. Unless they had wanted me to hear them. My pulse pounded as I reached the curtains. My hands were ice cold, trembling. I took a slow breath. Then I pulled the curtain aside. And my stomach dropped. A single handprint was pressed against the glass. Fresh. Smudged. Like someone had just been standing there watching. I whirled around, locking the front door, checking the windows, my breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. Rachel stirred on the couch, blinking groggily. What's going on? I didn't answer. Because I already knew. Eric had found me. And he wasn't done yet. I stared at the handprint on the window, my breath coming fast and shallow. Eric had been here. He'd stood outside this apartment in the middle of the night, just watching. A slow, creeping realization settled over me. He wasn't going to stop. Not until he had me and Mia back under his control. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I wouldn't let him win. Peter Holloway moved fast. By morning, we had filed for an emergency restraining order. It wouldn't keep Eric from trying something, but it was proof, evidence that I feared for my safety. Evidence that the court would take seriously. And I needed every scrap of it. Because Eric fought back. 2 days later, I was served legal papers. He was filing for full custody of Mia. His claim? That I was an unstable mother who had kidnapped our daughter and was keeping her from him. That I had abandoned our home and was exposing Mia to an unstable living situation. The sheer audacity of it made my hands shake with rage. But Peter had warned me. This is textbook, he said, flipping through the paperwork. He's trying to paint himself as the victim. The good father just trying to save his child from a dangerous mother. How do we fight this? I asked. Peter gave me a long, assessing look. We outmaneuver him. And that's exactly what we did. For every accusation Eric threw at me, we had an answer. He claimed I was unstable. My clean psychological evaluation and glowing references from my hospital job said otherwise. He claimed I had no stable place to live. Rachel wrote a signed affidavit stating that she had offered us a home and that Mia was safe and thriving. He claimed I had denied him access to Mia. We produced every text message, every voicemail where he'd done nothing but threaten me. But the real turning point? Mia. Eric thought he could control everything. That he could spin the story however he wanted. But he underestimated the one person he couldn't manipulate anymore. When the court-appointed child psychologist interviewed Mia, she didn't hesitate. She told them everything. How she had spent nights listening to Eric yell. How she had watched me shrink into myself, afraid to breathe the wrong way. How she had asked me, that night in our home, "Mom, is Dad hurting you?" And the judge listened. By the time we walked into court for the final custody hearing, Eric's mask was slipping. He sat across from me at the long courtroom table, his suit crisp, his expression carefully composed. But his eyes were burning with barely contained rage. Because he was losing. The judge reviewed all the evidence. Then, the ruling came down. Sole legal and physical custody to me. Eric was granted only supervised visitation. It was over. Except, of course, it wasn't. As we walked out of the courtroom, Eric caught up to me in the hallway. "This isn't over, Julia," he said, his voice low and sharp. I turned to him, feeling the weight of everything I had carried for years. The fear, the exhaustion, the control he had held over me for so long. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I smiled. "Yes, Eric. It is." Then I walked away. And this time, he didn't follow. Mia laughed as she ran through the grass, her hair whipping in the wind. The sun was setting over the lake, casting golden light over the water. Rachel sat beside me on the picnic blanket, sipping her lemonade. "You did it," she said. I watched Mia, free and happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. "I did." Rachel smirked. "And, let's be real, your lawyer kicked his ass." I grinned. Yeah, Peter was worth every penny. Eric had tried to appeal. He had thrown every last legal trick he could afford at me. But I had been ready. By the time the dust settled, he had lost not only custody but control. Mia no longer feared him. And neither did I. That was the real victory. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia came running over, breathless and smiling. "Can we stay out a little longer?" she asked. I glanced at Rachel, who shrugged. "Why not?" I said. Mia grinned and ran back toward the water. And as I watched her, for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. Truly, completely free.